Let's meet self. In a parallel reality buried deep within our collective consciousness, there once existed a person that went by the name of self. Self was born into this realm with the utmost essence of purity. Self had a blank canvas to paint the picture of reality self wanted to realize. Self had the paintbrush. Self could choose the paint. And self had all the time in this incarnation to paint this picture. This picture would help set the stage for the remainder of self's spirit life journey in this incarnation and beyond. Self was not aware of this power. Self was under the impression that one is born, they live a life, and then they die, and there may or may not be an afterlife. How did self come to this conclusion? Well, that's another allegory, but for the sake of brevity, let's just say self had parents, role models, teachers, imagery, and lots of narratives to foster and sustain this assumption. Self never bothered to look within and realize self is both the creator and the created. How is self going to use that paintbrush? Self begins to paint on that canvas, and suddenly self discovers many disconnects on that canvas. Why is the reality depicted so disconnected from what self aspires for? Why is there turbulence, adversity, and distress woven into the fabric of everyday existence? And why does self often stand under an existential umbrella of ambivalence? After all, a blank canvas coupled with a painter who aspires to paint their desired rendition of reality should at least reflect their aspirations, right? Do self's aspirations include turbulence, adversity, and distress? Think carefully about this question. Why would self paint turbulence, adversity, and distress on canvas alongside what self aspires for? It is because self has a very important impetus, as do all of us. We hold this innate desire to swing on the pendulum and experience both sides of the pendulum, the yin and the yang, the protagonist and the antagonist, a state of being and its antithesis. This is the essence of creation, and it is woven into every facet of our existence in this realm. When we embark on a journey or take on a task or solve a problem or delve into unexplored territories, we periodically encounter the unexpected. What on the outside can be perceived as failure is really a series of processes that give us exposure to both sides of the pendulum. It's about creating balance, and the attainment of balance is a critical component of realizing the consciousness of heaven. In essence, in encountering the unexpected or what one might perceive as failure, one is being brought one step closer to realizing that consciousness. In the Gnostic story of creation, Earth was created in the image of the feminine. Sophia, who is the feminine personification of wisdom, didn't realize limits or boundaries, and she found herself blindsided as she traversed the journey of creation. She needed a counterpart, reference points, and a basis to realize opposites and antitheses. She hence gave birth to Yaldabaoth, who represented the opposing force that would complete her. Sophia embodied light. Yaldabaoth embodied matter. Sophia saw no limits and boundaries. Yaldabaoth was defined by limits and boundaries, and so on and so forth. How did Sophia come to realize balance? She was attacked by Yaldabaoth, and she fell. Her fall instigated the creation of the material world, or the physical earth realm as I call it. The physical earth realm is where we are. We are operating within and among matter. We are working within the constrictures of the mind, and the heart is something abstract, ambiguous, and mostly difficult to understand in this mindset. Let's go back to the story of Self. Self wants to learn how to ride a bicycle. Self knows what a bicycle is, what it does, and has a pretty good idea of how it works. There's a first time for everything, so Self gets on the bicycle and begins to pedal. Self is so focused on maintaining balance, Self loses sight of the path and rides the bicycle into a tree and falls and is in pain. Shortly thereafter, Self recovers from the pain, gets up, sits on the bicycle, and gives it another try. What is Self doing? Self is not learning how to ride a bicycle. Self is actually learning creation. Self is reliving the story of creation, the exchange between Sophia and Yaldabaoth. Self is experiencing both sides of the pendulum. It just happens to take the form of learning how to ride a bicycle. That's all for now. Be well, sun gaze, and thrive selflessly. No pun intended.